You have people leaders who go after the title. They chase the title, they chase the promotion, they chase the money.
I do challenge leaders to say that, do you even know if these individuals have the aspiration to lead other people?
HR is not immune to losing trust in an organization and then having to take a tangible action, exiting the organization.
What is it that you want to be known for as a company? You know, what makes you great? What are your resources that stand out?
If you got a lot of bodies in the background, then you shouldn't be highly regarded as a high performer, because again, you can't tell me this person's great at their job, but their leadership sucks. Like, that just doesn't make sense.
People are spending more time with you than they do their loved ones, and they should feel comfortable showing up to work every day and not have to work for a bully.
Welcome to the HR Misfits, the podcast about leadership decisions most organizations get wrong, told from the HR seat that actually sees the fallout. We're business-minded, human-centered, and just bold enough to challenge the people systems that no longer work, where polished playbooks end and real leadership begins. We're the HR leaders who've been in the room when things get messy, political, or uncomfortable, leading with heart, grit, and a little bit of sass. If you believe HR should be a catalyst, not corporate theater, and leadership should actually work for humans, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Hello, fellow misfits. We are back. And I just sometimes wish you could hear the few minutes before we actually hit record, because one of these days I'm going to secretly hit record and just let it roll and see what happens. We're on our shenanigans again. Very excited to bring you today's episode where, as Marci would say, we're going to slap around some managers. Okay. Yeah. That's what she said before I hit record.
I did say that.
You did, you know. Of course we would never. We love our managers. But part of the I think the crux of the show is a little bit of, like, you know, making fun of or kind of poking fun at some of the things that we do in this function in HR. And of course we do that tongue in cheek because we love this field or we wouldn't be in it, right? But today, the heat is off of HR, you guys. We're going to talk about our managers, our people managers, our people leaders in our businesses. Yep, let's get ready. And we're just going to tell some stories and have some laughs. And, you know, maybe we'll drop a nugget or two or three of, you know, takeaways that we can take back to our businesses, and all of us do a little better as people leaders. So let's dig in. I know we've got some horror stories and probably some great ones too, but the horror stories are a little more fun to share on the HR Misfits platform.
I cares about the great ones today. Yeah. we'll put a pin in that for a future episode.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Every time.
See, I said circle back last time, so LaToya made me proud by putting a pin in it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think that, you know, and we've talked about SHRM, you know, a lot, a handful of times on this show. And so while we won't, you know, put them in the hot seat for the entire episode, I do think we could just admit that there was certainly some bad people management there, right? They wouldn't have ended up in the hot water that they were in. I was reading an article too that they never even put the woman that sued them, that they terminated. They never even put her on a PIP.
Oh wow, not formal.
Yeah, that's what I read. Now again, I should probably
progressive
check
discipline
that.
Just out the door.
Yeah, which is a red flag. But yeah, so let's talk about it. Marci, LaToya, what first comes to mind when you think about? We all have it, right? When you think about a bad manager, there's probably one or two or five, hopefully not more than that immediately pop in your mind, and you're like, oh, here we go. Talk to me. Tell a story about one of your experiences. No names. No, we're not trying to get anybody fired or get ourselves fired. Okay.
No, but
that is not the goal here. With no PIP, we'll get no PIP, just fire. We'll be on that.
Exactly. I'm not trying to get the two of you in trouble. I could obviously speak more freely, but
yes,
we want to protect the two of you. So we're going to take a page out of LaToya's book and we'll refer to them as different names. So we said, you know, Sheila or Paul, like whoever we want to say. But yeah, this is such a good topic because it's true. You know, we don't want the function to think that we're only picking on HR behaviors, because after speaking and getting to know the two of you, I know LaToya has tons of stories because she worked with me and we have lots of stories. So unfortunately, yes, we probably could say we have more than 5 stories as we think about.
Yeah.
100%, right? Like total nightmare stories
Yeah.
where you're just like, how do you work here? So I think it's a great topic because there are a lot of behaviors that we see in HR, and it's good for people to understand that, yes, we do see these behaviors. Yes, we do call them out. And yes, we cringe alongside of you when we see them because they're not okay. And when you have a people leader who's in charge of a team, with great power comes great responsibility. And
That's right.
For me, I think my biggest takeaway at times has been you have people leaders who go after the title. They chase the title, they chase the promotion, they chase the money, which is understandable, in terms of the way in which we view potential and upward mobility. It's like, oh, well, you're supposed to climb the corporate ladder. But let's face it, there's a lot of people who have these titles that probably should not be leading people and being responsible for teams. And that's where I see a lot of the times those horror stories come in, because you come across leaders, and I had one, let's call him Paul. And, I remember sitting across from him, and he says to me, well, I worked really hard to get this senior director title, and I have a team of people who just can't seem to figure it out, and they're doing everything wrong, and I. And I was like, oh, like, where's the giant pin that I could just deflate this ego in 5 seconds? And so in that moment, I knew I had to be that person, that HR partner, to take him down a peg or 5 because he needed to be. And so I started asking him questions like, well, why did you even want this job? Well, what do you mean? Of course I wanted the senior director title. I said, yes, but did you ever stop and ask yourself what it actually meant? Because you are now the coach and not just the player. And now you have a team of people that you're calling stupid and can't do their job and all this. And I said, but that's actually your responsibility to make that right. Yeah. So either you don't have the right people on the team and you made bad hiring decisions, or you're a terrible leader and you're not setting the tone and the direction for your team. Now, him and I went at it for about 6 months. It took me 6 months to get this guy in shape. And I will say the result of that was that he did finally see the light, because I actually did put him on a PIP, which was fun, putting a senior director in that position where I basically said, here's your performance improvement plan, or that's it, you're out the door. And I did turn things around, but that was a very difficult, uncomfortable setting to have to be that blunt with a leader. But let's face it, that is what we have to do in HR. We have to job.
I mean,
that's the job.
You go up in the hierarchy, right? It gets more interesting and complicated. But I always tell people that I coach or mentor just around leadership, the biggest jumps are, I think there's 2 critical moments when you go from being an individual contributor to a people leader. Yes. And again, a lot of companies, most companies equate that next level to get, like, you've reached a certain level of performance or expertise, and then you elevate. That usually then comes with responsibility of people. But we don't necessarily prepare people for that part. Like, some companies do this really well. Like, I know companies that say, like, hey, before you can be a people leader, you got to go through some threshold of training. To me, that's best in class. Like, that's the way you should do it.
Yes.
You have to do these things, and you kind of got to go through a little bit of a people leader boot camp to even get to that point where you can be considered in charge of people. But that is not the norm. And to me, that's a miss, because to put people in charge of people, that is not the same skill set as a subject matter expert. So I could have been knocking out the park as an individual contributor. That does not make me a good leader. Absolutely. And we'll put people in these roles, and it kind of like Paul, like, you believe that I've earned this title because I've worked hard and I've done this, but you've never really contextualized what it means to lead other people. Also, to transition your mindset from being the player to the coach, right? Yes. How to work through others. And this is where I see a lot of people fall off the wagon, so to speak. And then you see, I know personally, too, about the PIP, a lot of people, whether it was going from a manager level to a director, that jump, and they don't make it through that first year without either some real significant, like, aha moments, like, I got to hold up a mirror, you're one step away from being on a performance plan, or they get dropped back down because you realize they do not have the capability to be a people leader. Yes. And it's more detrimental to the company than helpful. And then there's those that was still the situation. They didn't quite meet the expectations, but somehow they just keep getting promoted.
I know.
That's when it gets interesting. like on our book, because it's like then of course people say, oh yeah, like they this has been an issue with them for years. Why do we keep rewarding this
That's my
behavior
favorite.
then?
I know.
Honestly,
So spot
honestly.
on, and that's my favorite. And you touched on something too, and Amy would love, because you probably experienced this too. When we go into succession planning conversations, if you notice, we always start with, oh, we have this funnel of talent and they're ready later, or they're ready now, or they're, and whenever you ask the question, well, what do they want to do you ever notice you get a lot of silence when you ask that question? So
yeah.
we said,
I don't
are we
know.
forcing people into things that they don't necessarily want to do because we think that's the definition of success?
Yeah.
Like that's ultimately what I see too, is we're pushing people into these moments where maybe they want to stay the individual contributor. Maybe that's where they're best suited. To your point, LaToya, that's probably where they should stay because that's where they shine.
Everybody does not need to lead people. And again, I think I've seen models where number one, there's an expert track, there's a leadership track. And you can still excel in your career, continue to grow without having to go down the leadership track. I think
Yep.
that that's a part of the conversation. I do challenge leaders to say that, do you even know if these individuals have the aspiration to lead other people?
Yes.
I have often gotten responses like, well, of course they do. How else are they going to move up in the organization? Not the
That's
same
not what
thing.
that's not the same thing.
That's not what I asked you. That is not the same thing. Do not make that assumption. And if we believe that that is true, and maybe they don't even have an answer, then as a part of their development, what you should be focused on is trying to get them exposure and opportunity to lead people. Let's do a little bit of a pilot.
Yes.
And see where they give them a stretch opportunity, because don't go from 0 to 5 and be like, oh wow, then you know what, they're not really good at leading in other, like no shit, like
Yeah,
we
like,
really could have seen that coming.
Exactly.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
they're a hot
Yeah, this
mess.
is a
Yeah, Julie, I wonder why.
yeah.
Shocking.
Or
they've never done this
they're-
before. You gave them a team of 10.
And I think too, we the higher they go, we make excuses for them. Like, oh, that's just how they are. Right? That's just,
That's
you
my
know,
favorite.
that's just how many times have we heard that? Oh, that's just Paul, right? You know, he
But they're
ruffles
really
a
good at their
few.
job, Amy.
They're really
That's
good at
my
their
other
job.
favorite.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
We
but
can't.
are they really good at their job if they can't lead the team that's underneath them?
It's like,
Yeah.
really, you have 50%, turnover in the majority of your positions because this person can't lead a team. Oh yeah, they're great at their job.
Yep.
It's just it's just these leadership things we got to work through. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that feels like a lot to me, but okay.
It's just those little things, not a big deal.
So silly, right? It's
I
so
think,
silly.
I think what's scary too is I've even seen where executive leaders, don't have the turnover, so their people stay because they're a lot like the leader.
Yes.
That's toxic,
That
right?
too.
So then, and that is a real tricky place to be, right? They don't have the turnover. They've got the tenured people on the team, but they're still just a bull in a china shop no matter where they go, pissing people off and, being disrespectful. The ego is huge. Like, and again, and you have people that defend it by saying, oh, that's just Paul, right? That's just how he is, But
I worked
we
in an
wouldn't,
environment like that.
yeah, it's tough. And we wouldn't tolerate that behavior for, let's say, a first line manager, right? Like a first line manager, if we would action that, why would we not action the higher level senior director, VP, executive that's doing the same exact thing? But I would say is even worse because their influence is broader across the company and it's felt in more ways than maybe that line manager. So, and again, we make excuses for it.
We do. And we have such a traditionalist view when it comes to even putting together an organization and putting together an org chart. And I think that's a lot of what we're starting to see resistance around, is this notion of, well, this is always how we do it. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but this plain vanilla org chart style that we've done, for decades maybe isn't working anymore. And we again have to come back to, ultimately, what is it that you want to be known for as a company? What makes you great? What are your resources that stand out? What do you want to be known for? And when you think about your ideal, when it comes to performance and it comes to standards, like, what does that look like? Like, what do you want your leaders to do? instead of this notion of like, oh, well, they're just really good at their job, Marci, and they're subject matter experts. And so why wouldn't we promote them? It's like, because they're an a-hole and they're literally they're driving everybody nuts, and they're pushing people out the door. You can't keep anyone. Oh, and then when you go to post a job, guess what? It's all over Glassdoor that you hire a-holes and no one wants to work for you. So you actually should be thinking about this in that mentality that constantly, whether it's your external facing marketing materials or internal, you are marketing yourself as an organization 24/7 in terms of who you are and what you stand for. And your leaders are your walking marketing, and they're actually killing you.
Yeah, I agree. So the reputation piece is so important. And like I said, I think this is like the dark side of HR too. Is like, again, you get up the chain, and it, to me, and I think Amy, this is kind of where you're going, it gets worse because they've gotten away with it for so long. The behaviors, they haven't changed at that point. It's like trying to teach an old dog new tricks, but then they also have almost been given permission that whatever you've done to get to this point is totally fine, because but the reputation is that, like, people I had many times in my HR career where people would say, oh, okay, well, you're gonna support, oh, that person, like, nobody likes them, this laundry list of things, like, is like the HR watch out list, and it's like, well, you might have to coach them through that, but like this, or these are the things to watch out for. And it's like, okay, but everyone knows this, and this is like, your onboarding packet to say, like, oh, they're a terrible leader, most of their team doesn't like them, they don't coach well, they don't develop all of this, but also, we're going to keep them in a spot. Not we're doing anything about it, or they leave it for that's somebody else's job to figure out that part, because we need to keep them in this leadership role. And then you, sometimes as the HR person, you're left with the residual damage of like, okay, so now the culture in the organization is a mess because that leader is setting the tone for the rest of the organization. And by the way, they just like, even the non-Glassdoor version, the word is out, right? People know that this person is not seen as a good leader. So either they're going to model that behavior and think that that's acceptable for them, or they're frustrated and feel like it doesn't matter what I say or do, because obviously this person is protected. And so even if I see something wrong, or I feel like things are not being done right, and it erodes the culture. So because they feel like there's nowhere I can go to, because obviously they are protected by some higher being. And that is a really tough place to be in as an ethical HR person, where you know that those things are happening. So, and you probably, like, a lot of times, I think, Marci, you find yourself in that situation and you try to coach the person, but if they don't try to hear what you're trying to say, you're kind of like in this battle with them all the time. So anything you hear or see too, they're just like, whatever, I'm doing a great job. Like, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't.
Exactly.
That's right. And the point about culture, I think I would just take it one step further and say yes, of course it's culture, and it's trust, right? It's trust, which obviously is a really important part of a company's culture. Employees see that you are doing nothing. That's their view of it. The perception is it. And if that person's still employed after continuing to berate people, be disrespectful, I think that employees start to say, listen, we've complained about this several times and nothing's being done. And right there, you've lost the trust of that employee. They will never give you all of themselves, because why should they? They no longer trust you, right?
I will say, and again, I'm not going to name names, but I was put in that position. And as LaToya alluded to, she's spot on. I used to joke and say I was that person. I was the fixer. And I started to get this reputation as someone who would come in and would hold people accountable. So I was like, that's a nice way of saying that I'm probably a bitch. But still, I was like, and that's the thing is, like, I lead with empathy, but I'm also very headstrong in the sense that if I see bad behaviors, I will call them out and I actually will hold you accountable, even if it makes my job uncomfortable. So I used to joke and say, like, don't put me in that position unless you really mean it, because I will actually exit high level leaders from the organization. And I have, I did, and there was someone who was pretty much being a bully. And I heard that, Amy, somebody actually took me aside when I became their HR partner. And they said, Marci, we've actually heard this before. We heard from HR that, oh, we'll take care of it. And they said, and then nothing changes. So I'm sorry, but I don't trust that. And that I will say that kept me up at night. And I was like, well, I can't be that HR partner then. And I do need to be the change. And I do need to make the tough calls in the uncomfortable situations and just lean into them. And I did. And I exited 3 actually high level leaders from that organization. And I'm not kidding when I say I had somebody literally hug me. And they were like, I don't think you understand what you just did for my psychological safety at work. And it broke my heart, not because I was like, oh, good for me, I did this. I'm like, no, the fact that we allowed this to go on for as long as we did. And then I thought to myself, how often do these situations happen where we don't do anything about them? And to your point, Amy, people are just showing up every day and saying, well, this is just how it is. And I just have to adapt to it because I need a job and I need money to support my family. And I'm like, well, shame on the organization if we're going to let this happen, because people are spending more time with you than they do their loved ones. And they should feel comfortable safe showing up to work every day and not have to work for a bully.
I agree. And that is one of the things, like I've been on that side too, where I'm like, look, I'm never going to be the HR person that just sits back and sees bad behavior and wrongdoing and not saying anything. Now, you don't want to listen to me, I'm going to escalate. Now, again, the closer you get to the top, the you don't have a whole lot of people to escalate to.
I know.
And I've been in that situation too, where I was like, I feel like I've done everything that is within my control to do.
Right.
But that is also a point where you make decisions, like to our HR family, like where you have to decide, is this the organization for you? Because I have absolutely had to make that choice to say, you know what, if what I'm saying or what I'm seeing, and I'm making sure that all of the things that need to be visible, addressed, are being shared with the right people to take action, and those actions are happening, like, it's not that I'm special, but again, if people are coming to me and I have a responsibility to do that, but then there's only so far I can go with that without the support of people that are more senior. And if you choose to do that, tells me everything I need to know about your leadership in this company. So I'm going to have to make a different decision, because the way that you're running your company doesn't align with my personal values, because no one should be, it should not be okay. And it's okay. Like I've even said, I understand being in the role that I'm in. There are times where things are happening that I can't know, but do not dismiss it and just say things like, oh, well, it'll be fine. Sometimes you just got to let those things go. Oh no, I'm not going to let it go. I'm going to let me go.
That's right. I'm going to let me go. Yes.
Like, I'm not going to be here. But I think this also builds on the conversation we're having with Jonathan around the HR accountability. This is where I think there needs to be a place where, like, if it sounds like, I mean, you have whistleblowing and all the things, and sometimes it doesn't really meet that threshold. That's really more about like real company bad practices. Right. But there should be an opportunity to be able to put that out there and hold the company accountable if things happen. And I've left organizations, seen this kind of play out, and then reading on the news or seeing something where some public information or lawsuits that got filed, and be like, you kind of get the Dr. Evil thing, like, I told you this was going to happen, but nobody wanted to do anything about it. I'm glad I'm not in the midst of that, but knowing that you did the right thing, like, that's always going to, like, I'm not going to compromise my ethics and my values because you don't want to do the right thing as an organization. Exactly. But I can't make you do anything. But look, all skeletons come out the closet eventually. And so it's only a matter of time where a company or an organization that embodies that type of behavior and tolerance, it's going to blow up in your face at some point. And then it's like, of course, the floodgates open, because then there's like 30 other people. Then that's just how companies get class action lawsuits on behavioral leadership things, because where there's smoke, there's fire. Somebody, then 20 people, oh yeah, I have that. And I was also keeping records for the last 10 years. So like, who's the lawyer we need to contact? Because I got a lot of stuff to add to that. And then all of the C-suite is like, oh my God, we're so shocked. Like, I don't think you are.
Yeah.
No, you're not, Chad.
Are you really?
Yeah. No, it's Chad. Chad is at the C-suite. That's right.
Yeah. Chad's in the C-suite. Chad.
Chad and Jeff, you knew what was going on.
You knew about it.
Paul is shit our middle management.
Mid-level.
Now it's Chad. Chad, you knew what was going on. We told
Chad,
you.
You knew what was going on. LaToya, it goes back to that trust factor, right? Because you and I, we are all, as HR practitioners, guess what? We are employees too, right? And so we have decisions to make about whether we trust the leadership in the organization. And so you're spot on. Yes. I mean, HR is not immune to losing trust in an organization and then having to take a tangible action exiting the organization if we don't feel like our values are aligning. So I think you gave a great example of exactly what we're talking about around trust and culture. We are not immune to that as HR practitioners. And if we have high integrity, we're not going to stand around and watch it all fall apart while somebody tells us that, while Chad tells us, that's just who they are. It's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to look the other
okay,
way.
Or like, oh, you just got to learn when to pick your battles. Like, we need to just let this go.
Yes. They want to brush it under the rug, but you notice, to your point, like this, they want to brush it under the rug, but the second that fire starts, then you notice their loyalty is gone. Then it's like, oh yeah, then we need to get rid of them. Absolutely, that's the right call. And I was like, okay, so you just waited till this got to a place where it was radically uncomfortable, and then your reputation was on the line.
That's right.
So as soon as it became personal to you, now you're ready to act. And it's like, again, this is where you have to address these things from the beginning. And, I've seen it, and as you know, someone who does coaching now, my favorite was like, oh, well, we'll just get him a coach. Yeah, but you know what?
Yeah.
Do they deserve a coach? Because what you're giving them is you're actually giving them something
development, investing in them.
What they really need is a swift kick in the ass to say, if you don't stop this behavior, you're out the door. Because
that's right.
This is what your scores are saying. This is what people are saying about you. This is what you're doing to harm the reputation and put us at risk as an organization. And again, it goes back to like, what do you stand for as a company? What are your principles? What are your values? And it can't just be hot air, or it can't just be words on a paper. You actually have to live into them and show your employees in action that you do believe those words that you're putting on a paper or on your website. Yeah. That's the differentiator that I see a lot.
I mean, look, it's super cliche, but it's true. There's real cost to it, and then there's this unspoken cost. People leave usually, I mean, there are some bad companies, but most of the result of when people say it's a bad company is the leadership of the company.
That's right.
People leave for bad managers, the situation that they're in.
Yeah.
Of course, that people say, oh, I love for better opportunities and stuff. But a lot of times, you're in that situation. It's rare where it's just like, oh, well, everything was amazing. I just got this off. But because I remember an HR mentor had said, but why, the question is, why did they take the call? Yes. Something else was going on before it. Because before we ever got to, I don't know when you call me that you're going to offer me another $20,000 or whatever. Something is going on where either I don't feel supported, I don't feel like I have the opportunities that I need. And that usually starts with leadership. Are you not talking about like, what's next for you? Here's what we see for you. You're not being transparent. And to me, that's a baby leadership problem that can be coached. And some people just don't know how to have the development conversations.
Yeah.
That could quickly blow up to something much, much bigger where you're just passive as a leader. You don't talk to people. You don't address conflict. If you see bad behavior in your team, you don't address that. Or you are the bad player on the team, right? With that, right? All of those is usually like, what are the symptoms that led to that? And that's what I always tell people. It's kind of like marriage and divorce, which we all can relate to.
Yeah,
you're like, oh, well, I got a divorce because divorce is an outcome. There were symptoms that led to that. It's usually not one thing. There may be one thing that leads you to answer the call, right? Make that decision. But there are a series of things that happen before then. If you get to the root cause, you start to see like, where did the fish start to rot? And that's usually what needed to be addressed and didn't get addressed. And that's what leads to turnover of usually your critical talent, your high potential talent, because those are the ones that have the most options. Right. They're not gonna just sit around. And then that creates a pattern that leads to higher turnover in the organization. You don't have the right people in the right places. And then again, I still believe, and I've seen it happen over again. Sometimes it takes longer than others. But the actual tangible cost comes when there's a lawsuit and, you have to prove, or you have to exit one of these very senior leaders, and they rarely leave with nothing, even if they have done all the bad things. Unfortunately, they usually still do not leave empty-handed. So now you're paying for the fact that you rewarded bad behavior, plus all of the residual damage that it caused that you're going to continue to pay for.
Yeah,
that's right.
Costly. Absolutely. Yeah, we can't argue that because we see it, because we know what it's like to then have to turn around and rehire and reshape. And if you don't look at the root cause of the problem, a lot of times you're just trying to slap a Band-Aid on something that's a geyser. It's just like, well, wait a minute. Like, we actually have a deeper problem here. Hiring 3 new people who just left. It's like, well, why did they leave? Did you do an exit interview or did you find out why? And then to your point, LaToya, they don't go deeper because companies are moving 150 miles an hour and they're just thinking, I have to produce, I have to produce, I have to produce. And we stop thinking about the actual issue at hand, which is, do you even have the right players in the seat? Do you have the right culture? Do you have the right strategy that facilitates you being able to get to your outcomes? And a lot of times the answer is no, but in their mind, they're just thinking of constant output. Well, I got to produce. And that becomes the distraction. And you're moving away from what is actually the cause, which is what the three of us love, which is why we do what we do and why we push these conversations, because we see it. We've been, how many different functions have we supported, different environments? And it's a lot of the same that we see.
I think, go ahead, LaToya. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to build on that and just talk about like, and I think a lot of companies do that, but Marci, you'll know, like the what and the how, right? Like I remember, like, as you guys know, I just hate the whole performance management process that exists in most companies, but this particular, so my first, like one of my projects when I was an MBA intern was like to help create like a marketing strategy around this new program. I mean, this new performance management. This was before I decided that I didn't like performance management. So I was super excited at the time, but it was rolling out this process where it was like, it's not just the results, to Marci's point, it's about how you do it. So there was going to be this whole leadership component that was a 2-part rating, which again, a lot of companies have now adopted. So obviously it's been a long time, even since, especially since I was an intern. So clearly this was a while ago.
Just a couple years.
And I was super excited about this because I was like, oh, wow, that's a really great way, because I've always felt like that. Like, you can knock the results out the park, but if you got a lot of bodies in the background, then you shouldn't be highly regarded as a high performer, because again, you can't tell me this person's great at their job, but their leadership sucks. Like that just doesn't make sense. So now it's like, oh, well, they have equal rating. So I'm super excited. Like, we're going to do this and we'll roll it out. All of it sounds great. Of course, I did an amazing job on the marketing plan.
Of course you did.
Landing so well. Here's what happened in practice, right? People would come into calibration sessions. This is probably when I decided that I don't like it, and say the same things. Like, I like to give this person an exceeds in results, but does not meet or partially miss in leadership. And they're like, well, that seems contradictory. Like, and they're like, but they're 2 different ratings now. And I'm like, oh no. So now we've created a monster, because they're like, well, no, I don't have to think about it. Now you can't tell me I can't. I'm thinking about it the right way, LaToya. Like, it's separate. They're a terrible leader. You're 100% right. I look at their results and you have to differentiate those. No, part of the job is the leadership, like, and that is part of the results. This is where I think we have a miss, where it's like, people are like, well, it's hard to measure that. It's not hard to measure that. Actually. There are real things that we put in the ecosystem to measure that. 360 feedback. We've got exit interviews, to your point, Margaret. We've got all this engagement data. We get all of these things, both qualitative and quantitative, that you can point to validate that. And it is part of your results. So what I always push for, every organization isn't on board, is that your actual performance objectives should include metrics tied to leadership, things that we actually are monitoring. Because what is the point of filling out an engagement survey if we're never going to use that to actually measure performance of our leadership?
Absolutely.
And the company's perception.
I cringe.
And this is why. And then they're like, well, why won't people fill out this? Well, what are we doing with the data? Because
of course,
that's why.
That's why.
That's my favorite. Oh, busy activity just for the sake of saying that we did it, right?
Yeah.
Like, but we're not going to actually do anything with it. We're not going to make employees feel that it's completely anonymous. So then we're just going to get aggregated data that looks like everything is sunshine and rainbows. Oh, good, we did our job. It's like, no, that's actually not accurate data.
Your voice was heard. That's what we have to send that email.
It's like,
and oh, by the way, it's HR's fault. Let's just be clear. Yes. It's HR's fault that we aren't actioning every single thing in the survey. Yes. It was the feedback.
It's a you problem now.
It's a you problem, Amy. Get on it. All right. Yeah. Fix everything. Okay.
Exactly.
Here's the survey. Fix everything. Those used to make me cringe. And I agree with you, LaToya. The performance rating, I know we can go down a rabbit hole again with that, because those used to make me cringe the most. Of like, oh, well, I technically met my distribution curve if I give this leader an exceeds in this, but in the how, I really think they need a partially meets, and here's why: their team hates their guts. And I'm like, wait, what?
Got a 5% engagement.
I remember sitting there in the meeting being like, is this real life? Like, this is what I did to myself. Like, I decided that I was going to be in HR and sit in these meetings with people who I'm like, how do you even tie
You
your
didn't
shoe in the
know.
morning if this is how your brain works, where you're trying to come up with this level of logic? And so
Yeah.
and again, like this is where I had to bite through my tongue because, me being the spicy person that I am, which is why Joe could say like I was put in these positions for a reason because they knew that I would, just like you, LaToya, I would vocalize it. I would say it. I was like, listen, I'm not the one. Like, I'm not the one that's
Or the
gonna
two.
sit around this room
That's
and
right.
let you out corporate lingo and try to sound like you're important because first of all, no one cares. In the real world, no one cares that you're a senior director. When you
Yep.
leave this office every day and live your life and you go food shopping and you interact with people in the world, they don't give a shit that you're a senior director. What they're
Right.
noticing is who you are as a person and how you show up in the world. And the same goes for when you step inside those four walls in your office. You're setting the tone, you're setting the pace, you're setting the foundation as a leader, and people are watching you. And they're asking these important questions, which is, could I work alongside this person? Does this person inspire me every day to come into this office and do this because I feel connected to what this company stands for? And if the answer is no, then you need to be asking those tough questions. Well, what is it that we're doing that is not inspiring that? And if it is your leader, then what are you going to do about it? Not brush it under the rug until it becomes a lawsuit. It's like, well, how are we going to actually action on this and give our leaders the tools and resources to be better? Perhaps it's training. Perhaps it is some coaching. Perhaps it is, maybe not putting them in leadership roles and removing them from that and putting them back into what they're good for. But that's where I think you see that, and the two of you can attest to this. A lot of times companies don't want to take that time to make those decisions because they feel it's too time intensive and it takes up a space away from what they want to do, which is constantly make money.
And it feels soft. It feels soft to them. It's like, empathy, compassion, leadership, culture. It feels real squishy. So
HR stuff.
That's that HR stuff,
Squishy.
So, yeah, squishy.
That's
It's that
fluffy.
squishy HR stuff. No, I was going to say too, like, I think it's important to know that we're not talking about a bad day, right? We're not talking about a manager that's like been short with somebody because of something acute that's happening in their world in that day. We are talking about, trends, behaviors over time with multiple people. Like, so I think it's important just to call that out because we're not over here trying to say we expect perfection. We get it. People have bad days. We live in a world where we're all trying to do all the things all the time. We don't turn off, and burnout is at a high. We understand that. And so nobody's expecting, I think, perfection, but so again, not talking about that one-off thing, right? Where, Amy snapped at LaToya because she was overwhelmed in the moment. And then later came back and said, what the hell was I thinking? I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that. Like I'm not with it today or whatever. Right. Exactly. We're talking about behaviors that just continue. And I think that it would be good for us to kind of talk through. I mean, I'm interested in all of, your ideas, and Marci, you hit on this, and LaToya, you even kicked off the episode, I think, with how do we fix it? Right. Well, one thing we do is stop putting people, individual contributors into manager roles without A, knowing if that's an aspiration, B, outlining what it truly means to be a people leader in our company. And we should have an onboarding kind of people boot camp or whatever you want to call it, where we say, these are the things that we expect our people leaders to do here at our company. And by the way, I would even say those discussions should be had way before a requisition is open. We got to, because let me tell you, everybody's going to say, oh yeah, I can do that. Why? The money, the title, the impact, whatever, that career ladder we want to climb so bad. But so in the moment, that person's going to say, oh yeah, sign me up for all those things. Right. So I think it's even a process that we need to have a little earlier on than just let's post a rec and see who applies. And then, they had the best interview. Of course, you probably get some people already that you're thinking about that you would move into those roles. But I would say, have you had the conversation about aspirations? Have you talked about what it really means to be a leader in this company? Do we have a people boot camp? What are some other things that we can say, we can encourage, leadership to really think about in terms of ensuring our people leaders are prepared for that actual part of the role, which I would say, I think we all agree is the biggest part of the role, right?
I think you're spot on with the people leader boot camp. I'm a huge advocate for this being a
I'll lead
necessary.
it.
As a part of your development, if you identify that people leadership is in your doing that, there's at some point you need to have done this well before an opportunity actually presents itself. And like I said, I can't remember the company. If people listen to this, companies that do this, drop it, because I'd love to learn more about it, how it's kind of going in practice. But just my own benchmarking when I was trying to champion this in a previous company, it was like you at a certain point you'd have to go through this. Like before that. And then let's just say you got catapulted and you're like, oh my gosh, Marci, you'll be great for this role, but it has a team and you didn't go through the boot camp.
Yeah.
Then they would say, okay, if it's a 90-day program, we'll give you the role. It is conditional on completion of this program. So you don't get to just be in a people leadership. It is an expectation. It was required.
Yeah.
And to me, like, I think there should be more of that just from the onset. Now, like, this is not an easy thing to do because number one, I remember when we were looking at this and like what it would take to do that, we probably got about 300 managers that need to go through the remedial version of this course, and they made it pass because let's be honest, but it would help, kind of get down on the list. But like to say, we got some catch up to do. And again, it seemed very disruptive at the time. So, but I think that's the mindset that I think we need to try to influence in companies, especially organizations where you have a large people leader. But like if you start it, it becomes the way of working and then it's not so disruptive. But I think we have to start somewhere because like I feel like I've been having this conversation about that type of thing and bringing people into people leadership for well over a decade. We could have been way further down this path than most companies at this point.
I agree. And you think about it too, there are creative ways, and you touched upon this too, LaToya, which is what I would suggest at times, stretch assignments to allow for opportunities for someone to step into that seat. For example, there's so many matrixed organizations out there, some of these large companies. You mean to tell me that you don't have interns or contractors or people that come in for project management, certain aspects of a role where you could say, oh, I have a senior manager on my team that I really want to get more people leadership experience. How about I give them an indirect report and let's see how they do? Like certain things where I see, I'm like, why aren't we thinking of these creative solutions? And yes, there are actually programs, and I see a lot of external programs now that I'm in the coach seat where they do that. They do sort of a leadership boot camp. And I'm coaching a few people right now who have aspirations to climb the corporate ladder and be more of an executive level. And I also coach executives. And I will tell you, it's still front and center in conversations as to how can I be a better leader? How can I show up differently? And we'll have those uncomfortable conversations because you should care about that. And it's not fluff. I always have a visceral reaction in my body when I hear that. It's like, I've had a leader say that to me. Well, Marci, like, I'm not interested in that fluff stuff. I'm like, what? First of all, what do you mean by that? You mean being a human being and interacting with other human beings? Because that is actually part of the job. And believe it or not, studies show that if you create an environment of psychological safety, people will work harder for you. Instead, there's this archetype of like, oh, I'll manage by fear. I'll get people to fear me and fear that they're going to lose their job. I'm like, that just gives you compliance. That doesn't give you respect or loyalty.
That is compliance.
Exactly.
It's not loyalty because to your point, that phone's going to ring and that person's going to listen to that recruiter on the other line and say, yeah, actually, I want to see if the grass is greener because I'm working for someone who doesn't care about me.
That's
right.
So
I do feel that there's creative things that we can start doing and do a little differently to get people in that seat before we give them the title. Oh, and P.S., how about we first ask them if they even want that?
Let's start there. Let's start there. Yeah. And I think you have to ask ongoing. I was just gonna say you have to ask with context, like not just do you want this role, this senior director role, Chad? No, it's do you want the responsibility?
I know you said 2 years ago you think you want to be a leader, but like this particular role, here's what you have to do, right? Like, are you? Yeah. Like it's like the airline when you fly. It's like, please verbally acknowledge with a yes. I do want to do all of those things for people.
That's right. That's right.
It's so true. It's like, Sheila, do you really want this job? Because we've been watching you and you're actually a terror. We actually think that you're a little bit scary and perhaps you shouldn't be leading teams or be in HR, for example, because you really don't even like people. So maybe we should
like, oh, that's part of the job. I gotta like people. Yeah, that's definitely not for me.
Yeah, definitely not for me. Before we wrap, I have one question for you ladies. I would love to hear your thoughts on this before we wrap today. And that is, let's say you have a person that's in a people leader role. They're in, let's say they're in a leadership role, not like an executive, but mid-level to higher level leadership role, people leader. Sheila. This is Sheila. We're talking about Sheila. And Sheila is not doing the thing. Now Sheila's so amazing technically, right? She's a great individual contributor. Do you A, let her go or demote her? And if you demote her and keep her, do you leave her pay?
This is the type of questions they should put on the SHRM exam, by the way.
Exactly. Right. Because this is real life over here, you know?
This is real life HR.
Yeah, it's real life
I would say
HR.
this. I think it goes back for me. I don't know what the options were again, but it's the one where you do not force Sheila into the leadership role.
Yeah.
I think that this is where there's an opportunity as an HR leader to coach whoever is the hiring authority in that particular situation on what's the best way to develop Sheila and get the best out of her. So like, again, we try to do something to solve a problem that doesn't need to be solved. Like, or there's a different solution, I should say.
Yeah.
If the goal is to make sure Sheila's continue to grow and we can harness the best, like you said, Marci, out of that person, out of Sheila, but leadership isn't the right path, how can we elevate her into a place where she can continue to grow in her career, continue to contribute and elevate that impact without actual direct leadership? And this is where I think, again, there are expert tracks that exist for this reason. There are going to be places where you need a high level strategic kind of impact type of person, but they do not need to lead people. And again, there's going to be a ceiling. I think it's a real conversation you have to have with like a Sheila. But the reality is there's a place where you can go. Like if you never have anybody under you, the conversation with Sheila is like, there is going to be a point where you could still make good money, still be, in a highly strategic role and continue to elevate.
Yeah.
Are you going to make it to the C-suite and never lead a people? No, probably not. But that might be okay with someone like Sheila. But we create that pathway to say, like, if people leadership is not your jam, you can still grow, and this is what that looks like.
I agree, because because that is okay. And that's an important point that you're leaving us with, because as leaders, we need to be able to have that conversation in the room to say, how about you stop forcing what success looks like for everyone? Because success doesn't have to look like the title. Some people just want to live their lives, earn a living, go home to their families, and not deal with a high level stress of being a people leader. So if they thrive in the individual contributor role and that's where they're happy, then shame on us for forcing them into our perceived belief of what success looks like. So leave Sheila alone. And I have had that situation, Amy, where I had someone who we forced into a leadership role and they really were not doing well. So I actually took her aside and said, your old role is still available. Would you like to go back to it? And what we did is, yes, it disrupted her bonus. She got a lower level bonus, but we kept her salary the same. But she thrived after that. And then I remember she called me and she stayed with the company because she said, you know what? I should have stayed where I was to begin with. I never should have, did that. And that was a lesson for both of us. So those are moments where, yes, I would say don't keep the person in the seat, because then they become the problem. And then we were part of that problem because we forced the hand. So ownership then comes on both sides of that table, in my opinion.
Yeah, completely agree. Yes. We dropped some nuggets today, guys. This is, I feel like this is a topic that we could talk about forever. Leadership, there's a big difference between leadership and management. This takes me back to my grad school days where we talked about the McGregor, was it McGregor? The theory X and Y, right? The difference between management and leadership. And to leave you with a visual, it's the manager grabs you by the necktie and pulls you along. And the leader is leading the way, but they're doing all the things and you're inspired enough to follow them. They don't have to grab you by the necktie and drag you along. Right. So, and that must have been a reference to 1970s where we drag people by neckties. I don't know where that's definitely we hope so. So thank you everybody for listening. We love your thoughts. So join in on the conversation on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, all the places. We love to hear from you. Your best and worst horror stories about managers, tips and tricks to help us as companies be better to prepare our people for leadership. And for those that are not ready for leadership, have honest, authentic conversations about where they are and where they're best going to be suited in the company to bring value and, hopefully be in a role that they're happy with. So thanks for listening. See ya.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to HR Misfits, where people leadership gets real. If this conversation resonated with you, follow the show and subscribe wherever you watch or listen. And if you're a leader navigating complex, high-stakes people decisions, we're also building the HR Misfits Collective, a place for real counsel, not HR theater. You can find us online at www.thehrmisfits.com.